Hi, thanks for joining me today. The struggle that retailers and brands face during a pandemic strikes a personal note for me. I first met my wife in 2003. Back then, she had a clothing shop on Queen West in Toronto. Her business was just taking off when SARS hit. Her clients, they all worked in the arts and entertainment industry, which overnight ground to a halt. A once bustling strip became a ghost town. This spring, I took a walk down Queen West again and had some serious deja vu. Back in 2003, my wife struggled to keep that store afloat. She had just spent her whole life savings setting up shop, and SARS came at the worst time possible. I witnessed the struggle and the sleepless nights and her trying to find some way, anything to keep her store going, even though nobody was coming in the door. Back then, Facebook didn't exist yet, and building a website from scratch with no money was impossible. Unfortunately, that store didn't survive, and I saw the heartache and pain of closing down shop firsthand. But while that business didn't last, thankfully our relationship did. Many years later, we're happily married. And that was our silver lining out of that pandemic. Unlike 2003, retailers and brands today have digital tools at their disposal to fight back in the face of this pandemic. The goal of this talk is to help you go from bricks and mortar to clicks and orders. I'll introduce you to an easy 3-step digital marketing framework. Be findable, be shoppable, and be memorable. Now, I don't know where you are on your digital journey, so I'm not going to get too technical. If you're just starting out, there's lots of great info for you, and if you've already started, I've got some different ways of looking at how to use your digital tools that you just might not have considered yet. And near the end of this talk, we'll go through some pointers on how to choose the right marketing partner, what to expect of them, and how to set yourself up for success. But only when you're ready. Where are we now with retail, with everything? In April, NYU Stern School of Marketing professor Scott Galloway had this to say: "Things won't change as much as they will accelerate. While other crises reshape the future, COVID-19 is just making the future happen faster." In May, McKinsey, the management consulting firm, released a report. In that report, they suggest that the pandemic has sped up the change in Canadians' digital behavior by 5 years, and that's just within the first few months. They found that more than half of Canadians say they're more likely to buy online now. And during the same period, we've also been spending 27% more time on social media platforms such as Facebook. But along with this acceleration, there's an environment of uncertainty. People are still spending, but with decreasing brand loyalty. During that same time, 18% of consumers say they shopped on a new website for non-basic items. So, there are more people online, more people shopping online, but they're less loyal and they're more price sensitive, which means that in the digital space, things have gotten way more competitive. There's also a different side of this, which is very positive. Along with this acceleration, Canadian consumers want to support their local businesses more than ever. RBC reported that over 2/3 of millennials, who, by the way, are now the largest segment of our Canadian population, so 2/3 of them would pay more for goods and services from a local business. And a full 75% of them say they would support a local business by promoting them on social media. It's amazing. Currently, 66% of them already engage with small business through social media, which is 20% more than any other age group. Would also like to remind you that millennials aren't kids anymore. They're now hitting their early 40s and they have families of their own. This is where the opportunity is right now. It's between the increased digital presence of the consumer and the strong buy local sentiment. If you can marry those two things together and adapt your business, there's a way forward. Another reason for hope. There are programs out there aimed at helping small business, especially retail. The Digital Main Street program does just that. It's supported by major players such as Google, Microsoft, and Shopify, to name a few. And the program has information and resources all aimed at helping retailers. They can take you through a step-by-step process that'll help your business with the digital tools that you need, whether it be a website, e-store, social media content, loyalty program, or a point of sale system. The program also offers grants of up to $2,500 for qualifying businesses, and they have a listing of vendors who you can work with. Now, we're going to be in this world for a while, with one foot in real life and one in digital. Stores will continue to exist, and they'll play a key part in the consumer experience, but the way that people get to your store is radically changing and may have changed permanently. So where to begin with digital? Most of you probably have some kind of digital footprint. You may have a Facebook page, an Instagram feed, and a web store, but there are always ways to improve what you're doing. A lot of what I see is that people get started, but then they hit a wall. Day-to-day operations take over, and these things go on the back burner. But the key to digital success, like most things in life, is consistency over time. There's no silver bullet when it comes to tactics. Successful digital marketing is a collection of activities that complement the rest of your business in real life, and they take time to grow. So before you approach any of the tactics or re-examine what you're already doing, I'd encourage you to take a step back and be realistic. How much time do you or your staff have? What are your collective abilities? How much time do you have to devote to learning new skills? Don't burn out by trying to do too much too fast. Think of your journey as a marathon and not a sprint. Now, let's talk about step one, being findable. Google is the obvious place to begin. They're the 600-pound gorilla of online search, with over 3.5 billion searches happening every day on their platform, and over 40,000 searches happening every second. One of the insights that most people miss about Google is that it's a whole lot more than just the Google search page. It's connected to other apps like Google Maps, which on its own has over 5 billion users per month, and YouTube, which is the world's second largest search engine. Think about that for a minute. YouTube has more search volume than Bing, AOL, and Ask.com combined. And when you think about YouTube as search, there's a whole new way to approach your videos. For example, if you have a unique product, you can use it to make a how-to video on YouTube and get organic views and exposure for your brand. In fact, I found a YouTube video with 1 million views on how to shine your shoes properly. You can create these kind of videos so that they have a long shelf life. There are really simple videos like this shot on iPhones that consistently rack up high views in the tens of thousands. When you're creating these kinds of videos, it pays to be hyper-specific about something, and above all else, try to be useful to the viewer. These videos are a great way of adding to your content ecosystem, which I'll get into later on. Well, I couldn't get through a section on being findable in search without bringing up those 3 letters, SEO. Now, it's important, but realistically, it's not something you can easily do yourself. It's very technical and it's highly competitive. For organic SEO, it can also take a long time and a lot of effort before it really pays off for your business. So, if you're at the early stage of your journey and you need sales more than anything, There are a lot more other things that you can do first that will help you move the needle. I'll get into some search engine marketing tips later on in the Be Memorable part of the talk. The first step to using any of Google's services is to create a Google My Business account. Google has made this easy by creating a self-serve website that walks you through the process. I'll include a link to the site in the materials that will be distributed after this talk. This account becomes a key to managing your activity across all of Google's apps. So once you've set up your My Business account, the first thing you should do is make sure that your business can be found on Google Maps. Chances are that your business already shows up in Google Maps because they've automatically added you to the directory. But once you've created your My Business account, you'll be able to go into Google and claim your business to complete your profile. This means that when people search on Google Maps, they'll be able to see your business, your phone number, address, hours of operation, and a link to your website. Google Maps has a powerful search nearby feature. So if someone is near your store or is looking to shop local, like they are these days, they can easily discover your business. Having a Google My Business account also allows you to measure how many people are visiting your website and calling your shop. People can also leave reviews of your business, which is a great way to build up trust and credibility. Let's move on to Facebook. With 2.7 billion active users, Facebook is a huge part of being findable. Your page on Facebook should include your store, location, hours, and contact info. It will allow you to post regular content and advertise to your clients on Facebook and Instagram. And tools like Messenger, which are built into Facebook, are also great for talking to customers one-on-one. Now that we've focused on being findable, let's move on to being shoppable. E-commerce can be daunting for many traditional retailers, and chances are that you've already got some kind of web store in place. Running a successful e-store on top of your bricks and mortar operation, well, that could be a strain on resources. But there's some good reasons to stick with it. Almost 9% of all retail sales in Canada will be done through e-commerce. That means that e-commerce retail sales will reach 50 billion, that's billion with a B. They'll reach 50 billion this year alone in Canada, and the trend is expected to continue into the foreseeable future. That being said, we're going to live in this blend of bricks and mortar and online sales for the foreseeable future. So how do we continue to thrive with our feet in both worlds? One of the best tools to help you make sales online while running your store is Shopify. It's a Canadian company that you've probably heard about, and turns out they're an international powerhouse for e-commerce. If you're not familiar with Shopify, think of it as your own Amazon. It's a website platform that allows you to easily set up your own online store. And this spring, Shopify saw a 47% increase in people setting up their own online stores. Small retailers see a 30% higher conversion rate on their online stores, which also points to a digital advantage that you may have from people wanting to support small business. Why is Shopify so good? Well, e-commerce requires a streamlined and simple checkout process. If you don't have that, people will abandon their cart, or they'll look at something, they'll get confused, and they'll walk away or browse away in this case. And Shopify, their real value add here is that they've figured out all the best practices for e-commerce, and they've done all the heavy lifting for you. Their sites are simple, they're easy to use for the consumer, and they work on desktop or mobile devices easily. And you can easily, without a web designer, set up your own Shopify store. You can choose from preset templates and be in business within 15 minutes for a simple setup. For your customers, the online shopping experience is easy and intuitive. If they've bought on another Shopify website, their payment info and address will often show up pre-filled when they get to the checkout screen. Shopify also has a wealth of tutorials to get you going. And if you want to dive deeper, they have Shopify Academy, which has in-depth courses, study guides, and exams to help you get all the skills you need to run a successful Shopify site. This spring, Shopify and Facebook joined forces to integrate Shopify's e-commerce strengths with Facebook's platforms. You can now have a Shopify storefront right in your Facebook page. They have focused on making it easy to set up down to the point where you can add products to your Facebook store with one click. And when you pair the simplicity of Shopify's e-commerce platform and the reach of Facebook and their advertising tools, this is an incredibly high impact way for you to drive sales online. There are many other e-commerce tools besides Shopify. However, since we're focusing on things that you could reasonably start yourself, I wouldn't recommend going beyond setting up a Shopify site unless you're very comfortable with doing your own coding and IT stuff. So let's talk about step 3 in the process now, being memorable. So just to recap, right now in the process, you can be found on Google, Facebook, and Instagram. You have a basic e-commerce shop set up with Shopify. And one of the keys to being memorable is to think of the story in your business and the story of your customers' lives. Where do they meet? And your customer should always be the hero of any story that you tell. Story is also key to how we make content and ads that get noticed. One of the most powerful ways of making content work even harder for you is to think of your story as a syndication. It's an old idea in media. Sitcoms and cartoons that you remember from your childhood were probably syndicated by being broadcast on multiple TV stations across the country. And I want you to think of each digital marketing platform as its own local TV station. For example, let's say you make a video for your YouTube channel on shining shoes using your specialty shoe polish. Here's how you can syndicate that idea. Repost the video on Facebook. Create an image carousel of each of the steps for polishing shoes in an Instagram post and reuse the video in IGTV. You can then take that video and create a step-by-step guide to embed it in an email blast to your client list. So that's one piece of content that now turns into 5. Syndicating your content accomplishes 3 things. It allows you to produce less content while having more output. You become consistent across all of your digital marketing channels, and it makes you look at all of your content and marketing together as an ecosystem. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to a tool that helps you look at this ecosystem as a whole and save a whole lot of time and coordination. It's called a content calendar. It's nothing fancy, and at its core, it's just a spreadsheet, but it can be the linchpin for all of your activities. At a glance, it helps you to plan out all of your organic and non-promoted social media posts, as well as keep track of all the ads you may be promoting on Google, Facebook, and Instagram. Which, by the way, just a quick sidebar here, that there's 2 main types of content, organic and paid. When I say organic, I mean posts that are put up without any promotion. And when I'm saying paid, it's exactly that, content that has paid promotion behind it. Back to the calendar. I recommend planning out your content and advertising at least a full month in advance. Now, I don't mean writing every single post, just putting in the ideas day by day, a month in advance. This exercise is really helpful because it makes you think about your story and take a look at the big picture of your business. And when you're planning out your content for the month, it's also a great opportunity to engage your staff and see if they have any ideas to contribute. For writing the individual posts, I recommend doing those about a week in advance. That will help you keep the content feeling fresh and relevant to what's happening in the world that week. Now, at the same time, no matter how much you plan things for your organic content, leave room for spontaneous posts. Maybe something interesting is happening at your store, so leave some space for yourself to make sure you can capture those moments as well. Let's look at one of the most underutilized and organic ways to talk to your customers: email marketing. Gathering your clients' email addresses is one of the cheapest and lowest friction ways to generate return business. Current stats show that the average e-commerce related email has an open rate of about 15%. Now, email is a great way to build customer loyalty. With email marketing, a little creativity goes a long way, and it doesn't take much because there's so many people who are doing it badly and not consistently. You should pay attention to the cadence and timing of your emails. Too many, too often, you can have a lot of people opting out, and too few, and they'll forget about you, and they'll be less likely to click through when they see a message because they don't even remember who you are. Now, there's two main platforms I would suggest for email marketing. There's MailChimp and Shopify Email. MailChimp is its own platform, and it can be integrated with your existing point of sale system. Shopify Email can be integrated with the whole Shopify platform, from your Shopify e-commerce site right through to a Shopify point of sale system in your store. Some of the best practices for email marketing include, use a personalized greeting. Have less than 3 different typefaces in your email. And make your email visually compelling and quick to read. You'll also want to keep good email list hygiene and go through that list regularly to remove addresses that are no longer valid. You'll also want to make sure that you're complying with Canada's anti-spam legislation, or CASL for short, by making sure that you're getting proper consent to add people to your mailing list, or what we call an opt-in. All right, let's move over to a paid activity: Google AdWords. These are the little promoted ads that turn up at the top of a Google search. Google has a simplified self-setup process that you can do online. Remember that Google account that you set up earlier to claim your business? Well, you can now use this same account to set up and run your Google ads. Their online setup tool will walk you through setting up your own campaign. It will ask what your objective is. Do you want to get more calls? Do you want to get more website sales or signups to a mailing list? Or do you want to get more visits to your physical location? And once you've chosen your objective, it will even make suggestions to help you write your ads. It will also make suggestions for what business categories to advertise in. You can choose the geographical radius for your ads to be seen in, so you could be anywhere from 5 to 65 kilometers surrounding your business. The process also makes suggestions for how much you can spend per month, and they'll include an estimate for the number of clicks that you'll receive through to your website. A word of caution here: if you're advertising in a highly competitive category, you could easily spend upwards of $1,000 a month on these. So my recommendation is that unless you're launching a completely new store or you really got your other advertising worked out well, I recommend using Google Ads sparingly. If you want to ramp up quickly to sales, you're really best to focus on getting your Facebook advertising working well before you move into Google. And further down the line, you might be better served to engage a specialist that can manage your Google campaigns for you. A good specialist will be in tune with how to get cheaper keywords out of Google's system that'll help you be more effective with your budget. Okay, I've mentioned it just now, but the other platform that we're really familiar with for ads is Facebook. And Facebook is not just Facebook, it's a group of sites and services that includes Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp. And altogether, they have an audience of 2.7 billion daily users. So it's easy to see the value in advertising here. Now, how to advertise effectively on Facebook it might seem like a mystery to some people, but the good news here is that Facebook, well, they've made it really easy for anybody to learn how to advertise on their platforms. The secret weapon here is a website called Facebook Blueprint, which is an online school where you can learn anything from how to make better creative to how to advertise across all of their platforms. And the best part is, all of these courses are free. Most of the material is even broken up into short 5 or 10-minute lessons that can be fit in throughout your day. If you want to take it a step further, you can write one of their exams and receive an official Facebook Blueprint certification. This is the only part of the process that costs money. It's $150 US to write the exam and receive the certification. However, that's completely optional. You can still learn everything you want without taking that final exam. My recommendation to any smaller businesses out there would be put some skin in the game. Be able to do the basics yourself. Try out doing a Facebook ad. Put a few bucks behind it and see what happens. You'll start to understand the system. And once you've got your page set up and you've experimented with some ads, you'll know a whole lot more about how these platforms work. And once you know that and have reached your limit, then that's a good time to bring in a consultant or an agency. Which brings me to my next section: choosing an agency or marketer to work with. This can be a difficult proposition for a small business. To make it worth it, the added expense has to connect to an increase in sales. Add to that it's hard to know if you're choosing the right person or if it's going to be the right fit. Long term, you should really aim to have daily tasks such as posting and figuring out your content calendar done in-house. Social media content always works best when there's authenticity at the core of it and it's connected closely to your business. My advice would be to have a clear idea on what your budget is when you want to engage a partner, and have a really good sense of the results that you want to accomplish even before you start talking to people. And when you do talk to people, bear in mind that sometimes cheaper is not always better. You could end up with someone very junior who's got a cheaper hourly rate, but you could end up spending more time managing them. And ask your prospects a lot of questions. Look at examples of their other work closely. Have they accomplished for other people what they're proposing to do for you? A lot of agencies will try to sell in a retainer-based agreement for ongoing marketing services. And this usually works out much better for both parties, as it cuts out a lot of the nickel and diming that can happen. And that's on both sides. But when not done right, it can also lead to poor service and results for you, the client. Have a written contract that clearly spells out the scope of the work that they're doing for you. If they're promising you certain results, write it into the contract. Get them to break down the approximate number of hours that they're going to spend on each task. And keep in mind that accountability is a two-way street. If you don't level set these expectations from the beginning, you may also be making life harder for your partner by taking up more of their time than they've accounted for. And the partner you go with, well, ultimately, they should have a vision for your business as to where they can take it. And they should be regularly challenging you to push further and do better. A partner should also offer the value of an outside perspective and help you up your game with things that will help your social media work harder for you in areas such as professionally produced creative and uncovering audience-based insights that will help you advertise more effectively, as well as connect your overall social media strategy to your business goals. That's the good stuff. I want to encourage you to look for the opportunity in this crisis. Push yourself, learn the tools, and be consistent by syndicating your content. And if you can harness the movement to buy local and find ways to make yourself even more digital, there's a new way forward with your customers. Be findable, shoppable, and memorable, and you'll make the journey from bricks and mortar to clicks and orders. Thanks so much for your time and attention. I hope this talk has been useful to you. Thanks again.